will operate constitutionally, professionally, ethically, effectively, and efficiently. Mr. Harvey and Professor Rodiger are both heroes of mine. Their work in the trenches of the systematically unconstitutional and unethical municipal courts in which they have practiced for the last 5 years has been truly extraordinary. They know the municipal court system at issue here today, inside and out, as it actually operates on the ground. In all of my experience, I have never seen a court system that so systematically preys upon poor people as the municipal court system that exists in much, but not all, of St. Louis County. Not in Alabama, not in Louisiana, not in Mississippi, not in Georgia, not anywhere in America. The reason that these municipal court systems are so systematically dysfunctional, in my view, is that by their very nature, they necessarily incentivize their judges, prosecutors, police, and city officials, all of them, to do the wrong thing. That is, to act as important revenue generators for these small governmental entities, which by reason of their very existence and nature are unavoidably economically compromised and incapable of performing these essential governmental functions constitutionally and professionally. It is no answer, I respectfully submit, to say that there are some good and decent men and women who have resisted and overcome these fundamentally perverse incentives and have performed as exemplary ministers of justice. There are such good and decent men and women, including my good friend Michael Gunn and veteran St. Louis lawyer Frank Vatterott. But this is not a case of a few rotten apples. This is a case of a rotten system full of invidious and perverse incentives. When judges are no longer ministers of justice, but rather instruments of government whose primary reason for existence is to generate revenue, the whole community suffers. And public safety, as we have seen so clearly in recent times, is seriously compromised. What we're witnessing here is nothing less than a fundamental breach in the very fabric of our society. It is flatly unethical for judges to be part of a revenue production system. Such a system unavoidably and inevitably compromises their judicial integrity. Such a system shatters the appearance of impartiality of our courts and breaks the social contract that is so essential to the consent of the governed. The result? Modern-day debtors' prisons, where poor people, primarily but not exclusively, black and brown people, are ordered to pay fines that they have no ability to pay whatsoever. And when they can't pay those fines, they are summarily thrown into jails, many of them in despicable subhuman conditions. This practice has been unconstitutional for over 50 years now. These courts have subjected St. Louis to national disgrace. The business community in St. Louis knows that we cannot attract major employers to this otherwise highly attractive metropolitan area, so long as this is the national picture of our civic life and culture. We must change this system fundamentally, and we must change it now. What is needed is a complete rethinking of the structure of these local governmental units, especially and immediately their municipal court systems. Now, Professor Rodiger has a proposal to do just that. It will involve a lot less than 81 courts, and it will require a lot less and $52 million a year. But first, I want Thomas Harvey to describe for you what his clients have endured in the municipal court system in St. Louis County for many, many years.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve, and thank you for having us here, Senator Dixon. My name is Thomas Harvey, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of ArchCity Defenders. ArchCity Defenders is a nonprofit law firm that provides criminal and civil legal services to the homeless primarily, but the indigent in the St. Louis region. And you may ask yourself, why do the homeless need a lawyer? Well, when we first started doing this work, we went to St. Patrick's Center, which is a great organization in the city of St. Louis that helps folks get off the streets. And we were just 3 new lawyers, didn't know what we were doing, and we said, we'd like to help some of your clients. The primary obstacle that St. Patrick's Center had to getting homeless people housing, jobs, and treatment for mental health and substance abuse problems was warrants in the municipal courts. ArchCity Defenders has a contract with the city of St. Louis, funded through HUD, to remove the legal barriers that prevent the homeless from obtaining and maintaining housing. We have 1,000 open cases right now in the municipal court system. If the municipal court system were structured differently, if it didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. And I'm here to advocate for the abolition of that system because it's literally creating homelessness in our region. It is destroying people's lives. I will tell you just a couple stories of a handful of our clients who've had this situation occur to them. So a typical situation is a poor person is pulled over for a moving violation. Typically by the time we get to them, it's been several years. These folks have been on the streets for 8 or 10 years sometimes by the time we meet them. Their moving violation, their traffic ticket, speeding ticket at some point, they were assessed fines that they could not pay. No one made an inquiry into their ability to pay those fines. They're told, if you do not appear with all of the money on a certain date, you will be arrested. Now, this is not true in most cases, but they're told that. They're threatened with incarceration if they cannot come up with the money. So a rational person doesn't go to court if they don't have the money they've been told they're going to be thrown in jail. Sometimes these folks don't go to court. Sometimes they go to court but are prevented from entering the court. There's a sign on many of the courthouse doors in St. Louis County that say, you may not enter the court, only defendants may enter the court. Children may not enter the court. So if you're a poor person and you go to one of these part-time evening courts, and you can't get daycare for your kids, you go with your kids. And when you walk up to the door, it says, well, you can come in, but not your children. So then what do? You go in and leave your kids on the parking lot? Some people have done that, and they've been arrested for child endangerment on the courthouse steps for leaving their kids on the parking lot with an acquaintance. So some people don't go in, and then a warrant is issued for their arrest. These are the folks that end up in this cycle that is impossible to get out of with the currently existing court system because there are 81 municipal courts. What happens is, at some point later, they're picked up on this warrant. Our clients believe they're being stopped because they're black. They don't believe they've committed any ordinance violations. They believe they're being racially profiled, and the numbers bear that out if you look at the Attorney General's racial disparity index. So they're stopped, and if municipality A says, we stopped you for having a taillight out, or we stopped you because you made an illegal U-turn, or whatever, we're just going to give you a ticket, but you got a warrant for your arrest in 5 other towns. So now this person is taken to a jail, and they're told, you may leave that jail if you come up with whatever the fines are from the previous case, the fines that you don't have anymore. And so they're told, they're held in jail until they call every single person they know, and they find a way to come scrape together $200 or $300. We're not talking about a lot of money. For the people in this room, that's nothing. You could pay that money and you'd be out in a second. For these folks, that takes their entire family to help them come up with that money. When they make that payment, all that has done is earned them the right to get bounced to the next jail, where they've got another warrant for their arrest, where they owe another $200 or $300. Now they've tapped out their whole family. They don't have any more money. And now they're said, well, what do? I don't have the money. And the jailer just says, well, you got to wait till you go to court. When's court? 2 weeks from now. They're not taken before a judge. They're not taken before a prosecutor. No one's made an inquiry into their ability to make that on payment. And so they languish in these jails that have filth and feces water that's undrinkable, they're not given food, they're given food, but it's substandard food. They're not given toothbrushes, they're not allowed to shower, and this is all because they're too poor to pay fines to one of these municipalities. This is destroying our clients' lives, and it's destroying the St. Louis region. We had a client who spent a month in jail, various jails, before she was sent to Forestel and eventually told, you'll have to spend another 2 weeks in jail. So after a month in jail, she was told, you have to pay the bond. If you cannot pay it, you'll be returned to jail and held for another 2 weeks. We were able to intervene and get her out. But by the time we got her out, she had lost her housing, she missed a job interview, and her children had been staying with their family in a separate school district, so they weren't attending school every day. We may believe that these folks have violated an ordinance, and many of them have. It's mostly for poverty, though. They're mostly people who can't pay insurance, they can't pay to get their license reinstated. And we can have a debate about that. But what everyone in this room should know is the consequence of an ordinance violation is disproportionate. The penalties are disproportionate to the violation that they've committed. No one believes people should be thrown in jail because they couldn't make a monetary payment after getting a ticket for making a right on red. And with that, I'll pass to Brendan Roediger.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I wanted to start by thanking Senator Schmidt and others who have done a lot thus far. Years ago, and I didn't have any clients. You have to have clients. You didn't have a poverty law clinic. I called a mental health agency, and I said, I'm here. I have 8 students, and I'm ready to help. And they said, well, we've got somebody, and they're locked up in a North County municipality. So I went out there, and that was my first experience. I walked into a courtroom, and I saw 30 to 40 people handcuffed together, all black. A white judge, no prosecutor, just a judge. It's called the confined docket. And I listened to that judge mock the people that were there. He would say things like, what's the matter, nobody loves you? $200, nobody loves you enough to come and bring $200? And I know he thought he was being funny. But it wasn't funny. Now that was North County, and we've heard a lot about North County. And I could tell a lot of stories about North County, as could Thomas. But I also represent folks in West County because poor people work in West County. They travel through West County. They work in South County, they travel through South County. The courts are no different. We've decided to use percentage of general revenue as the measure of how bad a court is. That makes poor municipalities look a lot worse. And many of those municipalities are worse, but not all of them. If we break it down per capita, if we talk about the amount of fines per resident of a municipality, we'll find that many of these West County municipalities, Town and Country, creep above some of the North County municipalities. This is a region-wide problem in St. Louis. There are 453,000 outstanding warrants in St. Louis County today. 453,000. That is 10 times Cook County in Illinois. This is not fixable by working around the edges. I want to emphasize again that this is not a North County issue, and I will give you an example. Richmond Heights and Berkeley are approximately the same size population-wise. They make basically the exact same amount of money off of their court. Under the percentage of general revenue, Richmond Heights looks pretty good, Berkeley looks pretty bad. My experience, about the same when it comes to representing poor people. Put it another way, if the Rams Stadium was built in Calverton Park, I know it's not big enough, would Calverton Park suddenly become a good municipal court? A constitutional municipal court? They'd have all the revenue in the world. Their court would be the exact same. So I'm here to say that the state has been somewhat complicit. It's been complicit in a number of ways. For one thing, there is special legislation on the book that allows St. Louis County municipalities to charge more than other municipalities around the state for ordinance violations, up to $1,000. For another thing, my clients, when they fail to make payments, have their licenses suspended by the Department of Revenue pursuant to statute. There are ways in which the state has been complicit. The solution, in my mind, is simple. Chapter 479 is where the statutes are, and Chapter 479.040 should have one paragraph added. And that paragraph should say that any municipality in any county of the first class with more than 900,000 residents shall prosecute their municipal ordinance violations in associate circuit court, unless they avail themselves of the other statutory provision that allows them to contract with St. Louis County Municipal Court. They will have two options. They can file their cases in full-time professional courts with full-time professional judges, or they can go to the county and they can say, we would like to participate in your regional satellite courts. How much is that going to cost us? That will fix this problem right now. So I also, and this is just very briefly, Mr. Knight talked about conflicts of interest. I wanted to point out that many of the state prosecuting attorneys participate in this system as municipal judges in the evenings. And that is absolutely as much of a conflict of interest as the conflicts that he drew attention to. I do agree with all of his statements. That's all I can say.
Any questions for this witness? Any of the witnesses?
And I might be wrong about that. So my question is, and I've struggled with this because as we've met before the legislative session about what are some solutions to some pretty egregious problems that are out there. The question is the operation of the courts. The idea that you would not be able to bring your family into a courtroom is, to me, it's counterintuitive to our entire system of justice. Having to make a decision between paying a babysitter and paying the fine is ridiculous, but it is the situation we have. As it relates to the operation of the courts, though, it is my belief that the court, the Supreme Court, and the circuit courts have a much larger role to play right now than they have played. And that is not necessarily a criticism. It is that as these issues are being brought to light, there are Supreme Court rules that can be issued that, in my view, a lot of the municipal judges that I have talked to, or people, advocates like you have pointed to, I think a lot of them just look to the local rules. They don't really look at the statute. So this idea that in the 1980s we actually passed a statute, we have on the books, that it is related to the fines have to do with somebody's ability to pay. And the Supreme Court did come out and say they shall deal with the fines in a way that somebody can pay. So they did change the language there. But what is your view of what further steps the Supreme Court might make, or what further steps the 21st Judicial Circuit might make that don't even require legislative action? I mean, could they wipe out all the municipal courts in St. Louis County on their own?
It is my belief that the Supreme Court does in fact have the power ultimately to transfer these cases. So if you look at how OSCA, the Office of the State Courts Administrator, sort of describes the hierarchy, they have municipal courts next to associate and circuit, sort of on the same level. Now, we all know that in reality, an appeal, a trial de novo from a municipal court will go to the associate level, but they have them on the same level. It's clear that the sort of chain of authority goes to the presiding judge and then ultimately to the Supreme Court. If the belief was that these cases were not being handled properly, I absolutely believe that their administrative power would give them the option of transferring jurisdiction. Now, the question is, would that then require the municipalities to all change their ordinances, since they have ordinances that say they will only prosecute these in the first instance in their own municipal courts? And the answer is probably yes. So it would be, that would be an extra hurdle in that regard.
But by way of local rule, for example, the presiding judge in St. Louis County, with obviously the consultation of the many judges in the circuit that I reside in, could make a number of these changes as well, correct?
I would absolutely agree with that.
I think it is my personal view that this is gonna take, and because of the attention that has been brought by many of the events over the summer and the fall, the good work of people bringing light to this, that we have a unique opportunity to make some pretty significant changes, but it's gonna require everybody. This is not just a legislative issue, this isn't just a courts issue, this isn't just a municipal issue. There are many different ways in which this system has become perverted. The revenue incentive side of it is very apparent. The openness of our courts, which I think is, if you try to, and as a lawyer I try to do this, if you put yourself in the shoes of someone, that can be a very intimidating experience. And to be hailed into court and to have a judge cut off your lawyer or not feel as though you're being treated properly, or as an ATM, as part of as an ATM for a lot of these municipalities that are existing now by speed trap. We have a very serious issue. It's going to take very serious people to resolve it. I appreciate the work that you guys have done, and look forward to continuing to work with you, the courts, and anybody else interested in solving this problem, because it does get to very fundamental issues that our republic was founded on, is that you're going to have your day in court and you'll be treated fairly, and that our notions of liberty are very much at stake here. So, thank you.
Be sure to fill out a witness form, each of you, if you would, please. I really appreciate you coming and testifying, and thanks for your work.